Tobias Weber stood at the window of his old farmhouse, gazing out at the gray October sky. 47 years of life had left deep wrinkles in his face and gray in his dark hair. 3 generations of his family have worked this land, turning what was once a small household into a thriving farm. But now everything had changed. He remembered his father teaching him everything he knew about the land and the animals. "The land is our nurse, son. Honor it, and it will repay you 100-fold," old Weber would often repeat. Now these words sounded like a bitter reminder of the past. 2 years ago, his father had died, leaving Tobias with a farm and considerable debt. The banks demanded repayment of loans. The equipment was getting old and the purchase prices for milk and meat were falling. One by one, local farmers sold their farms to large agricultural holdings, but Tobias stubbornly held on. "No, Dad, I'm not selling our land," he whispered, looking at an old photo of his father on the wall. It started to rain when he went out to inspect the roof of the barn. It always leaked in the fall, and he had to get the holes patched before the real downpours. Tobias worked alone. He could not afford hired workers for a long time. His wife left him 10 years ago, unable to stand the hard life in the countryside. "I'm suffocating here, Tobias. I need the city, another life," she said then. Suddenly, a figure on the road caught his attention. The woman was soaked to the skin, barely able to stand. Without hesitation, Tobias hurried over to her. "Miss, are you hurt?" He supported the stranger by the elbow. "I'm lost," she whispered, looking up with tired eyes. "My name is Anna Miller." "Tobias Weber," he introduced himself. "The nearest village is 15 kilometers away. Let's go inside, you need to warm up." In the warm kitchen, he wrapped Anna in an old blanket and put a cup of hot tea in front of her. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with a pleasant face and blonde hair. "Thank you," she said quietly, warming her hands on the cup. "I lost my job in the city. I thought maybe I could find something in the village. I have nowhere to go." Tobias looked at her silently. He knew he couldn't afford an extra mouth to feed, but he also couldn't throw the soaked woman out into the street. "I grew up on a farm," Anna continued, as if reading his mind. "I know how to work with cattle. I know how to take care of a garden. Maybe I could help you. At least for a few days while I look for something permanent." Tobias noticed the calluses on her hands. Not city hands, that's for sure. Perhaps she did know farm work. "You'll spend the night in the guest room," he finally said. "And tomorrow we'll see. Right now, you need to rest." After Anna went upstairs, Tobias sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring out the window into the darkness. Something told him that this meeting could change his life, even though he didn't know whether it would be for the better or for the worse. Outside, it continued to rain, and the old house creaked under the gusts of wind, as if reminding him of all the stories he had seen over the years. And maybe somewhere among those stories there was room for one more, a story about trust and hope in difficult times. The first rays of sunlight were barely breaking through the morning fog when Tobias entered the barn. He froze in surprise. Anna was already there, skillfully milking the cow. "Good morning," she greeted him without looking up from her work. She woke up early and decided not to waste any time. Tobias watched her confident movements. "You really know what you're doing." Anna stood up, wiping her hands on her apron. "My parents had a small farm in Austria. I grew up doing all that." "Why did you go to the city then?" Tobias asked, picking up another bucket. Anna froze for a moment. "I thought there was a better life there. But I felt like a caged bird in the office." Tobias understood this feeling. He couldn't imagine himself in the city, no matter how hard it was on the farm. "Mr. Weber," Anna suddenly said, "I saw your greenhouses. They are almost empty, but the soil is good. Why don't you try growing some herbs for the local restaurants?" Tobias frowned. "That would require investment, and right now, every penny counts." "But "Look, Miss Miller," he interrupted, "I appreciate your desire to help, but I know how to run my own farm." At that moment, Margaret Schultz, Tobias's neighbor, entered the barn. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw Anna. "Tobias?" Her voice was full of suspicion. "I didn't know you had guests." "Good morning, Mrs. Schultz," Tobias replied calmly. "Miss Miller is helping me with the farm." Margaret gave Anna a critical look. "Oh, yeah?" "I've been here since last night," Anna answered. "Mr. Weber was kind enough to offer me shelter when I got lost." Hmm. Margaret moved closer to Tobias. "You know, dear, you have to be careful with strangers these days, especially when you live alone." Tobias felt his patience wearing thin. "Thank you for your concern, Margaret, but I can decide for myself who I trust." When the neighbor left, Anna said quietly, "She's right. You really don't know much about me." "I know enough," Tobias replied, picking up the pitchfork. "You know how to work and you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. That's enough for now." Over the next few days, Anna proved that she really knew her way around the farm. She suggested a new ration for the cows that would increase milk yield, cleaned up the dilapidated greenhouse, and even fixed the old tractor. One evening, as they sat on the veranda after a hard day, Anna said cautiously, "You know, Tobias, your farm has a lot of potential. You just need to look at some things a little differently." Tobias clenched his fists. "You think I haven't tried?" "That's not what I meant," Anna replied gently. "It's just that sometimes a fresh perspective can help you see new possibilities." Tobias gave her a long look. Over the days, he had noticed that Anna had a strange understanding not only of agriculture but also of finance and marketing. Too good for a simple farmer's daughter. "Who are you really, Anna?" he asked quietly. Anna looked away. "Just a person who wants to help." That night, Tobias could not sleep for a long time. Something told him that Anna was hiding something important. But then, why did her advice seem so right? And why, despite all his distrust, was he beginning to rely on her more and more? A sunny Sunday morning began as usual. Tobias woke up at dawn and went down to the kitchen, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee was already wafting through the air. For 2 weeks he had gotten used to Anna getting up even earlier than he did. "Good morning," she greeted him, placing a cup of coffee in front of him. "I've made breakfast." Tobias nodded as he opened the local newspaper. His gaze happened to land on the business page, and suddenly his heart sank. Anna was looking at him from the photo, elegant in a business suit with her hair pulled back in an elegant bun. "Anna Miller is a leading expert in agricultural recovery," the article read. "Her consulting company, AgriLife Solutions, has saved more than 50 farms from bankruptcy across Europe over the past 5 years. Tobias felt the blood drain from his face. He looked up at Anna, who was putting eggs on plates. "What is this?" His voice was hoarse with pent-up emotion. Anna turned around and froze when she saw the newspaper in his hands. A look of guilt flashed across her face. "Tobias, I can explain." "Explain?" He stood up abruptly. "Explain that you've been lying to me all this time." "I didn't lie," Anna answered quietly. "I just didn't tell you the whole truth." "What difference does it make?" Tobias felt anger rising in him. "You came here for a reason. What was it? An experiment? Was it fun?" Anna took a step toward him. "No, listen. I really work as a consultant. I help farms that are in trouble. But people, they change when they find out who I am. They start to hide problems, show only what they want to show." "So you decided to play spy?" Tobias smiled bitterly. "I wanted to see the real situation." Anna sat down at the table, her voice trembling. Tobias turned to the window. "And what did you see? A poor farmer who can't cope with his father's inheritance." "No," Anna answered firmly. "I saw an honest, hard-working man who is doing his best to keep the family business alive, a person who deserves help." I don't need your pity, he said through gritted teeth. This is not pity, Tobias. Anna stood up and walked over to him. This is a professional assessment. Your farm can be profitable. You have everything you need: fertile land, good livestock, well-established processes. You just need a few changes in approach. Tobias turned to her. And how much would that cost? Your advice must be expensive. I'm not going to charge you, Anna replied quietly. Consider it a personal project. Why? He looked her straight in the eye. Why my farm? Anna was silent for a moment, as if searching for words. You know, my father was also a farmer, a small farm in Austria. He couldn't cope with the competition, with the new market demands. He had to sell everything for nothing. It broke him. She paused, collecting her thoughts. That's why I studied agronomy, economics, and management, to help farms like ours. And when I saw your farm, Tobias, you reminded me of my father, the same dedication, the same pride. But you can still make a difference. Tobias felt his anger slowly ebb, giving way to other feelings of confusion, hope, and something else he couldn't or wouldn't identify. What do you propose? He finally asked. Anna beamed. First, your greenhouses. You can grow organic vegetables for local restaurants. I've already spoken to several chefs and they are interested. You've already talked to them? Tobias raised his eyebrows in surprise. Yes, she nodded. And that's just the beginning. There's an opportunity to get a grant to modernize the dairy. And also— Stop, Tobias interrupted her. Let's take it one step at a time. I can't fully trust you. I understand, Anna replied gently, but give me a chance to prove that I really want to help. They talked for a long time that day. Anna showed him calculations, explained her ideas, and answered many questions. Tobias listened, argued, and doubted. But somewhere deep inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. In the evening, when they were sitting on the veranda watching the sunset, Tobias suddenly said, You know, my father always said, don't be shy about asking for help when you really need it. I guess I've been forgetting that advice for too long. Anna smiled softly. It's never too late to remember. But I still don't understand, he looked at her. Why didn't you just come as a consultant? Why all this masquerade? Because then you would have shown me what you wanted to show me, she replied, and not what is really there. And also— She hesitated for a moment. I wanted you to see me as a person, not just a consultant in an expensive suit. Tobias was silent for a long time, thinking about her words. During these 2 weeks, he really saw Anna as more than just an employee or a consultant. He saw a person who was sincere, hard-working, and caring. And maybe that was what made him consider her offer now, instead of just asking her to leave. Okay, he finally said. Let's give it a try, but on one condition: no more lies. I promise, Anna replied sincerely. Tomorrow I will show you a detailed plan of action, and Tobias, thank you for your trust. A gloomy October morning found Tobias in his father's old office. He was sorting through documents and yellowed photographs, trying to find answers to the questions that had plagued him all night after his conversation with Anna. There was a quiet knock on the door. May I? Anna looked into the office, holding a folder. I brought the contract for your review. Tobias nodded, not looking up from an old photograph. Look, he handed her the picture. This is my grandfather and father, around 1958. They had just bought their first tractor. Anna took the photo carefully. They look so happy. Because they believed in the future, Tobias answered quietly. My grandfather always said that our land is not just a plot of land, it's a family story. He got up and went to the window. You know, after the war, there was almost nothing left here. My grandfather started everything from scratch. He worked day and night, denied himself everything to buy this land. And now you're offering me— what? Anna spread the documents on the table. A contract with Eurofarm AG. This isn't just a farm purchase, Tobias. It's a partnership. You remain the owner and manager, but you get financing, new equipment, access to modern technology. And I lose my independence. He smiled bitterly. No, Anna said firmly. You get the opportunity to develop what your grandfather and father created. Look. She opened the papers. The company is investing €500,000 in modernizing the farm. New equipment for dairy production, reconstruction of greenhouses, drip irrigation system. You will be able to double your milk yield, start growing organic vegetables. And what do they want in return? Tobias interrupted her. 30% of the profits for the first 5 years, Anna answered. Then we can renegotiate the terms. And the right of first refusal to buy back the products at market prices. Tobias returned to the table and took another picture. See this man? This is Hans Müller, our neighbor. 10 years ago, he signed a similar contract with a large company. They promised him mountains of gold, and a year later, his farm became just a division of the corporation, and he became a hired hand on his own land. Anna came closer. I know this story, Tobias. That's why I personally worked on this contract. It has all the guarantees of your independence. Tobias studied the document carefully. Anna continued. And one more thing. I have included a clause about preserving traditional farming methods where appropriate. No one is going to force you to switch completely to industrial production. Why are you fighting so hard for this? Tobias suddenly asked, looking her in the eye. Anna was silent for a moment. Because I have seen too many farms that have simply disappeared. Tobias turned to the window where he could see his ancestors' fields. You know, when my father was dying, he made a promise to me. Take care of our land, he said. I swore that I would, but now, I'm not sure I understand what that means. Anna came and stood next to me. Maybe preserving doesn't always mean leaving everything as it is. Maybe sometimes it means giving the farm a chance to live again. Tobias looked at Anna. Now, I'm afraid that without changes, everything here might really come to a standstill. So you agree? She asked cautiously. Give me time to think about it. I want to read everything again, maybe consult a lawyer. Of course, Anna nodded. You have a week. But Tobias, this is a really good opportunity. They spent the rest of the day discussing the details of the contract. Anna patiently answered all the questions, explained each point, and told them about other farms that were already working under this scheme. In the evening, when they were sitting on the veranda with cups of hot tea, Tobias suddenly said, You know what the hardest thing is? To admit that I can't do it alone. Anna gently touched his arm. It's not weakness, Tobias. It is wisdom to realize when you need help. Perhaps, he looked up at the sky. He stood up and walked around the veranda. I will think about your offer. I will think about it seriously. But I need time. Of course, Anna replied. This is an important decision. It cannot be made in a hurry. Tobias nodded, looking at his farm, which was slowly sinking into darkness. This was not just a cooperation agreement. It was a decision about the future, not just his own, but the future of his life's work, his father's and grandfather's work. And he realized that this decision would change everything forever. The week passed like a single day. Tobias hardly slept, reading the contract over and over again, consulting with a lawyer and thinking over every detail. Anna didn't pressure him, gave him space to think, and continued to work on the farm as usual. That morning, Tobias woke up before dawn. He went down to the kitchen and found Anna making the usual coffee. I've made a decision, he said, sitting down at the table. Anna froze with the coffee pot in her hands. And what is it? Tobias took a deep breath. I will sign the contract, but I have a few conditions. I'm listening. Anna sat down across from him, her eyes shining with interest. First, Tobias pulled out a piece of paper with his notes. I want the old employees to stay. Marta has been taking care of the cows for 15 years, and Peter knows every inch of our fields. It's not a problem, Anna nodded. Experienced workers are an asset. Secondly, he continued, I want to keep some of the land for traditional farming, a small plot where everything will be as it was before. You want to create a demonstration farm? Anna's eyes lit up. That's a great idea. We could give tours to school children, show them traditional methods. Tobias couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. One last thing. I want you to stay on as the main consultant for the project. Anna raised her eyebrows in surprise. Me? But… You know this farm, Tobias interrupted her. And I trust you. Tears welled up in her eyes. Thank you. It means a lot to me. They agreed to sign the contract the next day. The company's representatives arrived early in the morning, two men in business suits who seemed alien here in the middle of the countryside. Tobias asked for a few minutes before signing. He went to the old oak tree where his father was buried. Dad, he said quietly, touching the rough bark, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but I'm trying to preserve what you loved, just differently. When he turned, his hand holding the pen did not tremble. The signature on the contract was firm and confident. Congratulations on the beginning of a new phase, Anna said when the company representatives left. How do you feel? Strange, Tobias answered honestly, as if something had ended and something had begun at the same time. They stood on the hill, looking out over the farm. The sun was rising above the horizon, illuminating the old buildings and fields that stretched to the forest. Do you know what Peter said to me yesterday? Tobias smiled. You finally stopped being a stubborn donkey. Anna laughed. He is a wise man. Yes, Tobias nodded. And he's right. I was so afraid of change that I almost lost everything I was trying to keep. Within a month, the farm began to change. New equipment for dairy production increased milk yields, and reconstructed greenhouses allowed us to start growing organic vegetables. But most importantly, the old buildings were once again bustling with life. One evening, as he and Anna sat on the veranda watching the sunset, Tobias said, You know what's the strangest thing? I thought signing the contract would mean the end of something, but it turned out to be the beginning. Anna smiled softly. Sometimes you have to let go of something to get something new. Like you, he added, looking into her eyes. You could have just come as a consultant from a big company, but you chose a different path. And I don't regret it, she answered quietly. Tobias took her hand. Neither do I. Everything had changed, but at the same time, it was the same. Tobias was sure his father and grandfather were smiling as they watched their beloved farm begin a new life.